All right, welcome everyone to the June 21st Board of Supervisors meeting, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I will start by calling to order the public hearing for H.R. 452 to consider amending Chapter 195, Vehicles and Traffic of the Code of Tredyffrin Township to make an addition to the schedule listing streets with parking prohibited at all time zones. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. I have the following board exhibits marked for this evening's hearing. Board Exhibit 1 is the proof of publication of the notice in the Daily Local News on June 10, 2022. Board Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication of the notice in the Mainline Media News Suburban on June 12, 2022. Board Exhibit 3 is the notice of public hearing sent to the email distribution list on June 6, 2022. And Exhibit Board 4 is a draft copy of the ordinance. Those are the board exhibits for this hearing.
Thank you. I will now ask for a motion to adopt H.R. 452.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any board comment? Any public comment? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. Oh, come on up. And please state your name and address.
This one? Oh, that's it.
There we go. Yeah. Oh, this should come on now. There we go. See if that works.
Hello? Okay. Hi, Janet Burton, 965 Henry Avenue, Wayne, PA. I have a question about what this HR 452 is actually doing on Fairview Avenue. What does it do? I wasn't quite sure.
This was brought to our attention by a resident after a parking complaint was handled by the traffic unit on April 14th of this year. With researching the parking complaint, when there were some vehicles parked down there, it was found that there was no signage, no ordinance to support posting a sign there. Traffic safety unit looked at it. The roadway was too narrow. Pretty much anybody could park there. There would be no enforcement. So to keep the road where it's accessible for residents to pass and emergency vehicles, the traffic unit recommended that institute this ordinance so we would have some type of enforcement were somebody to park down there and block it, as happened on the day that the complaint came in when they had looked at it.
So this does not prohibit residents or anyone else from parking on the side of the street?
At that location, yes, it does.
On Fairview Avenue?
On that little section.
So there is no parking on Fairview Avenue at all?
On Fairview Avenue from a point 364 feet west.
Do you know, is there an address where that number is, so I can get a visual?
It's from Henry. So Fairview Avenue south from Henry, 364 feet.
I don't know how long Fairview Avenue is, so is that like half the block, or?
It's more towards the corner where Henry and Fairview are, that intersection. It's basically, looks like a drive, it's one lane. It's a one lane section.
Oh, okay. So is it similar to what we have in place that should be in place at the top of Henry Avenue and the top of Upper Gulf that are on each side of Henry Avenue?
I have to look the ordinance up to see exactly how it's written, ma'am. I don't have that in front of me right now.
Okay.
This, like I said, Corporal.
So we have a sign that says no parking from here to corner at the top of Henry Avenue.
Okay.
So that people can see, cars can come and go and not be obstructed from vision when turning in or out of that street.
Yes.
So this is similar to that, you're saying?
Similar to that for the one side, just for that 364 feet.
Just for that one side.
And it's the 364 that's very narrow. So if somebody were to park there, emergency vehicle or other vehicles would not be able to
Wouldn't be able to make that turn there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We thought this meant there was no parking on the street at all for Fairview Avenue.
There's no parking on Fairview Avenue on the south side, just the south side,
Right.
for 300, from Henry Avenue, 364 feet is what this was proposed.
Right, and we were under the impression that, we didn't know how much 300 and whatever feet was, and we thought it consumed the whole block, so we were like, wait a minute, no, what's going on here? So, now that you clarified it, I think we might get a better understanding.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for coming out, for clarifying it for everyone. Feel free to come on up.
Tashoma Gebermedin, at 969 Fairview Avenue. Yep. Sure. Teshome. Last name is Gebremedhin. So I'm on Fairview Avenue, 969. I just want to make sure and clarify that on the north side, facing north side on Fairview Avenue, that we are allowed to park. Currently, the no parking signs, I'm the one that had called. On the southeast side, that's where some cars were parking and just blocking any cars being able to come over. So I just want clarification that on the north side on Fairview Avenue, that parking is still allowed. There's no signs currently there.
As the ordinance is written, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other public comments? All right, hearing none, this is a roll call vote, and I will start with Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries, and I am going to close the public hearing for H.R. 451. And I will call to order the public meeting, and we will begin with announcements. There is one open position on the Park and Recreation Board and 2 open positions on the Historical Commission. If you are interested in volunteering, please send a letter of interest and brief resume to the township. All property owners are reminded that the annual stormwater inspection reports were due June 1st. Please submit them as soon as possible. Violation notices will be sent later in the summer if they are not received. Residents and business owners are reminded that they can sign up to receive the township's monthly electronic newsletter to receive information on news and current happenings in and around the township on a monthly basis. Visit www.readychesco.org to enroll for the types of notifications you wish to receive. Choose Tredyffrin Township General to receive the newsletter. In observance of Independence Day, township offices will be closed Monday, July 4th. Wilson Farm Park will be closed until 5 p.m. on that day to prepare for the evening celebration. After 5 p.m., residents can come to the park for the concert that starts at 7 p.m. and fireworks at dusk. We move to the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the May 23rd, 2022 public meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We move to township business. The board met in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss legal matters. And now we have liaison reports. Supervisor Miller.
Thank you. The Planning Commission met on June 16th, and the purpose of the meeting was really to just get input from the public and the Planning Commission on a couple of ideas. One was the map change. This is item J in the agenda for today. The map change on the use and definition of self-storage. There was a lot of discussion on how to define self-storage, on what rules and regulations should be put around it, and I know there's going to be some discussion after this and some additional input and additional work that'll be done on that ordinance. We've discussed short-term rental enforcement ordinance. There's also a lively discussion on the way that should be enforced. I think overall most of the input revolved around having that ordinance be analogous to the way enforcement is done on student housing, and I know there's more work that has to be done on that ordinance. And finally, there's a use of short-term rentals in historic properties as an amendment. That got a lot of support. There's also a few, I think, tweaks that need to be done to that as drafted, or that draft ordinance before it will be ready to be approved. And that concluded that meeting. Our next Planning Commission meeting is the 21st of July at 7 p.m. right here in the Township Building. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Holt.
Thank you. The Library Foundation Board met on June 7 at 7 o'clock, and The big announcement there is the charity golf event that I've signed up for. Others have signed up for. I hope everyone can get out there. There's opportunities for lunch and dinner and cocktails, and it's a really great event, and I hope everybody can come out. Hope I'm not stealing Supervisor Baskar's thunder on talking about this, but thank you to all the volunteers on the foundation. They put a lot of time and effort into developing the resources for our libraries, and we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Yes, Zoning Hearing Board. At its May 26 meeting, the Zoning Hearing Board announced decisions in the following two matters heard at its April 28 meeting. First, it granted the application of Paoli Shopping Center, Volta Charging LLC, 39 Leopard Road, Paoli, for a variance to permit changeable signs, two changeable signs, each on the sign face of two proposed charging stations at the site. Secondly, the ZHB granted the application relating to 1000 Jonathan Drive, Malvern, for a variance to construct a garage to be 18.5 feet from the property line where 40 feet is required. Also at that meeting of May 26, the ZHB also heard, Zoning Hearing Board also heard and granted three applications. First applications granting, two applications granting fence height variances, one for a 5-foot fence in the front yard of 21 East Central, Paoli, and the other variance for a 6-foot fence in the front yard of 1949 Welsh Valley Road, Malvern. Secondly, the ZHB granted the Nectar Restaurant a variance to provide for one fewer parking space than would be required for a 680 square foot patio. The next ZHB meeting will be on this Thursday, June 23. Also, the final special meeting on the Picket Post 355 Chase Road Zoning Validity Challenge matter will be held on Thursday, July 7 at 6:30, at which time the ZHB will render its decision in that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Basker.
The Environmental Advisory Council met on Tuesday, May 24th. A workday was planned for June 4th to enlarge the cages previously installed in Wilson Farm Park to protect young trees from weed whackers. And as the cages worked really well, they need to be enlarged, which is good news for the trees. And there also may be a tea garden stewardship event in the fall, in August. The Woodland Conservation Ordinance draft is being drafted by township staff and the solicitor to be reviewed with the EAC task force sometime in June. And then the EAC thanked Tracy Viola for her presentation to the Board of Supervisors on May 23rd on a single-use plastic ordinance. And on that, by the way, I have this is after the EAC meeting, but I've heard that apparently Easttown yesterday passed their single-use plastic ordinance, which is good news. There were 3 rain gardens were installed this spring, and proposals are being assessed for the fall. There needs to be some adjustment to the Stratford Library rain garden because water flows into the storm sewer rather than into the rain garden. And Phil Whitmer was nominated for the EAC Associate Member position. Suzanne Hay received a Conservation Award from the Garden Club of America, so congratulations to Suzanne. And the EAC wanted to thank graduating Conestoga seniors, intern Lavanya Aluwalia, and volunteers Aishi Debroy, Sofia Kogaeva, Claire Stieg, Lily Shui, and Kaira for their work with the EAC. And we'd like to congratulate them on their graduation and wish them well for their future endeavors. And more recently, post-meeting, we have good news that the Marshall Reynolds Foundation has awarded $45,000 to Valley Forge Trout Unlimited for a second new stormwater infiltration trench for the Upper Krabby Creek watershed, and I'd like to congratulate all of those who submitted who were responsible for that application, so thank you. The Library Board of Trustees did not meet as scheduled on Thursday, May 26th for a lack of quorum. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that the next EAC meeting will be next Tuesday, the 28th of June. The next meeting of the Library Board of Trustees will be this Thursday, June 23rd. And moving on to the Traffic Committee. The Traffic Committee met on Wednesday, June 15th. And topics that were discussed, there were a couple of requests for crosswalks, one on Central Avenue, West Central Avenue at Woodbine Park, and across Old Lancaster Road at Rose Lane. Both are unsafe locations for crosswalks, so because of limited visibility, so there won't be crosswalks there. There was also a resident request for speed bumps because of speeding on East Conestoga Road between Upper Gulf and where it goes under the train tracks. And apparently during drive time, there are people speeding. That's a state road. So what the Tredyffrin Township Police Department will do is put a radar out there, and if there's enough data to warrant going to the state, to PennDOT for some action, then we'll do that. But right now we have to start with the data. There's a comment about Circular Avenue at South Valley Road being a frequent source of accidents with the residents at the home in the southeast corner, for example, at risk. So there was a resident there who said that he was trimming his hedge when a car just sort of crashed through and almost nailed him. And apparently a lot of the issues are that people on Circular Avenue don't necessarily realize that it's not a four-way stop sign. So what we talked about doing is putting a sign out there that says cross traffic does not stop, so that they realize there's a stop sign. And the other thing is that, there are people coming down South Valley Road from Paoli, that there's a little hill and they think they can hit the gas there. And finally, a resident raised concerns about potholes from construction on Old Lancaster Road near TE Middle School, and Public Works assured the resident that they would ensure that the utility contractor properly resurfaces the road once the work is done. And thank you, Dr. Gussie.
Thank you. And today I am covering the liaison report for the Historical Commission because Supervisor Freed couldn't be here tonight. First, on July 28th from 5:30 to 7:30, the Tredyffrin Historical Commission will be sponsoring the Chester County Village Walk. Just a little bit about it. French generals Lafayette and Duportail served on George Washington's headquarters staff during the Valley Forge encampment from 1777 to 1778. And today, a short wooded walk connects their winter quarters in Tredyffrin Township and Valley Forge National Historic Park. Guides will present French connection stories during our country's founding. Learn about Tredyffrin's Great Valley agrarian life at the newly opened Living History Center in the reconstructed Jones Log Barn, Chester County's newest heritage destination. And finally, enjoy a cool creekside walk over one of Pennsylvania's remaining metal truss bridges with a guide from PennDOT's Cultural Resources staff. So I hope that everyone can take advantage of this fun walk. And I would also like to make a motion to reappoint Rob Williams and Allison Andrell to the Historical Commission. Rob has been a game changer for our Historical Commission. He's brought energy and organization as the chair to transform the commission into a productive and exciting group. And Allison joined the Historical Commission in 2021 and has added enthusiasm for protection of historic resources, as well as expertise in marketing and communication. So I make the motion for their reappointment. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, congratulations. Now we will move on to the motion to adopt Resolution 2022-14, authorizing township staff and its consultants to develop a detailed proposal to establish and impose an annual stormwater management fee. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The resolution before the board tonight formalizes what the board unanimously voted on in April, and that was to establish a stormwater management fee. Happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-14?
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion?
I move to table until after the presentation of the stormwater management fee. I mean, it just, to me, makes sense. Why not have a presentation and then vote on it? I mean, do whatever. I would need a second.
We have a motion.
All right, do we have a second?
We have a second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, no one is opposed. You can start with, so we move to the stormwater management fee implementation presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight, I will go over just the steps, from where we are today to, final implementation, which will be essentially when residents receive their first bill. So again, go over, I do want to touch on, project review. We have a lot going on already in terms of stormwater projects. So I think it's a great opportunity to showcase that, go over some of the crossroads to implementation, things that the board will have to deal with, working with staff and public. Funding sources, again, for those projects that I mentioned. And then I'll go over the priority of the tasks that are involved with the overall stormwater program that we've previously laid out, and then, again, what are our next steps? So I broke projects out into flood reduction and MS4 projects, infrastructure as well. So as you can see, we have 9 projects that currently either funded or need funding for flood reduction and MS4. You can see, we also have some projects that we have partial funding for that we're, again, still seeking additional funding, but we already have 9 projects. I won't get into detail with every single one, but each of these, when Steve goes out, currently when he's gone out and tried to identify projects, he tries to hit projects that, again, solve flood reduction and mitigation, will help us attain our MS4 objectives and what our requirements are in our current permit and infrastructure if it can. So these are 9 projects already identified. Infrastructure, we have 4 big ones going on, so I can touch on those a little bit. The big one out of these, Pew Road's funded, but it's taking forever, and it's, again, I think a good opportunity to just update everybody on that. We're just waiting on PICO at this point. The project's out to bid. We're ready to go. We're moving along, but PICO still has not put the new gas line in. And so that's going to be the major impediment to finishing that project and getting the road back open. The Chesapeake Boulevard culvert wall, again, so that project has morphed into not just the one side, which we dealt with last year, but now both sides of the pipe, replacing that. So that's going on. West Circular Avenue drainage improvement, that's going to be a big project that again, Steve's seeking funding for. He's applied for grants, which I'll get into. But that's going to be also, require some PennDOT involvement, and it's like one of those situations where it's the chicken or the egg. PennDOT doesn't want to do anything or move anything without us doing something, and so, we're doing our best to accommodate that situation as well. And then the West Valley Road drainage system, we have money in the current budget for that, and so we'll be moving on that sooner than later. And then some of the other things Steve's been working on. He's required to update our current stormwater ordinance, so he's been working on that. And hopefully that'll be wrapped up, I think, September of this year, hopefully by. Yeah. Steve, Darren, and the chief have been, all working tirelessly with FEMA on disaster grant reimbursement. And so that's required exorbitant amount of their time with getting information, measurements, justifications for last year's Fred and Ida storm. So we're still working on that, and hopefully that process will be wrapped up sooner than later, as well as the FEMA floodplain home acquisition program. That's, I'll say, a constant state of flux. So how do we plan on paying for some of these projects? So Steve has worked tirelessly to apply for grant funding for all of the projects listed on here. I highlighted the projects that we as a board and as a township are going to have to come up with a funding source. So as it stands right now, we're going to need almost $140,000 for the Gregory Lane Phase 1 portion of that with Jenkins Arboretum. We'll need another $38,000, almost $40,000 for Phase 2 of that project. West Circular, Steve's estimating, $230,000 of township money that's going to be needed. For Woodcrest, we have Willis and Upper Wheatley, we have $1 million already identified out of ARPA funds. And Bear Road, the same thing. We have, right now, we have the funding secured, but Steve is trying to offset our contribution, our portion, slightly. So the top portion, the Gregory Lane, Phase 1, West Circular, Woodcrest, and Bear, were all submissions to the county as part of their ARPA funding. And so we're hopeful that we'll have an answer back from the county sooner than later. And then Steve applied with DCD for Phase 2 of the Gregory Lane. And the reason I bring this up is, one of the questions I've been asked by a few board members is, are we going to consider issuing bonds? And so my suggestion and my recommendation to the board would be to hold off, for now, on, the overall bond discussion. While yes, I understand rates are going up, with the sheer amount of grant applications that we have out there, it only makes sense from a planning standpoint of view, and again, just to know where we end up with all of these requests. After that, I think then we can shift the discussion to figuring out exactly what we need in terms of bond money to move these projects forward. Switching to some crossroads to implementation. Again, formal operations as it stands right now, we're set to begin 1/1 of '23. So as part of the 2023 budget process, you'll see, when I put together the complete budget, the stormwater, there will be a stormwater fund, separate tab, which will have, all of our operations detailed. In our capital budget, that'll be its own section as well. How are we going to fund these operations? Until we have the formal fee in place and out and build, the general fund is going to have to cover the cost, and we'll use the due to, due from function. So to put it in layman's terms, the stormwater fund is going to borrow the money from the general fund, over a couple of years, and then pay back that money over that same period. Right now, we're looking at, it's going to be over probably $1 million a year in the short term with salaries and benefits, and then, just the operating budget overall. But, as we work through the budget process, we'll try to pare those down as much as possible, but that's what we're estimating as of now. I just touched on, the timing and the amount of a potential bond issuance to be determined. But giving a $10 million bond issuance right now would be about $750,000, a year on average in debt service. And one of the good things with debt service is that we can get a little creative in terms of the timing of the payment of principal. And so we can defer essentially for the first 2 years to have almost no principal payments, interest only essentially, and then you make that up in the later years. And if, we end up going down the bond route, I would recommend just to control the cash flow a little bit better, to go down a route like that where we defer the principal as long as possible. Some further crossroads. Again, we're going to need the, overall structure is going to need to be developed. And that, the lead there is going to be, the engineering study. So that'll be the study to the, the impervious coverage, the parcels throughout the township. As part of our, overall development, we'll work with the board to develop, an appeals process. So, any individual homeowner disagrees with the, the interpretation of their lot size or their impervious coverage, if we, go down that road, how do they go about, dealing with that? And so we'll outline that process to be clear and easy to follow. Exemptions. Interesting enough, when Radnor Township implemented theirs, they didn't exempt themselves from the fee. So that's just a question, does the township want to exempt itself from the fee? And then, are we considering any other exemptions? So again, that's something we'll work with the board to develop. Rebates, reductions to fees. Again, we'll have to work with the board to develop that program. Based on my conversations with Mr. Burgo, at this moment, we would recommend in the early stages of the fee that we would, that we wouldn't have any reductions or rebates to the program for the first couple of years. But again, that's obviously in flux, but something we should definitely talk about. And then, again, a possible incentive program. So one of the drivers to getting, a lot of stormwater work done has been redevelopment. And so, as staff, we were discussing, is it possible, or does the board want to consider, further incentivizing developers to put more stormwater in, and what that means. And so, again, it's just something that I think we should keep in our minds as we work through implementing this program. Furthermore, again, I would expect us to have special meetings, open houses to discuss the ordinance once we work on that, the fee structure to make sure that the residents understand how the fee is being developed and what they're going to be charged. As I mentioned, the appeals, exemptions, all of that. Again, the expectations of the overall program. I think it's important for us to really drive home that this is a mitigation effort. We're never going to completely solve the problem, but there are plenty of steps that we're taking and that we're going to take that will absolutely help. But it's going to take a long time. This problem wasn't created in a year or two. It's been decades, and it's going to, I think, realistically take us more than a decade to really start to see the fruits of our labor here. I would say as part of the ordinance development, we're going to need to have an official policy on infrastructure outside of our existing right-of-way, and what that means. So we have, we get a lot of calls and complaints about stormwater pipe that runs through people's yards, and what the impact to that is going to be and how we deal with that. The potential here is that it's going to require a lot of easements if the township decides to take ownership over those pipes. And so that's just another reminder of something else we have to deal with as we implement this. In terms of finance implementation, we're going to start hopefully next year working with our vendor to upload a central property file. So that will take all the parcels in the township. We'll get that organized and start to get that ready for when the final fee is developed. We can just hand it over and then turn it loose. We will obviously need the fee structure to be finished before we can complete that, but we'll be ready. And then I don't right now foresee any issues with the sewer bill, but if there are any, we'll have to work those conflicts out. And then the other thing is that the stormwater bill, the storm will be on the same bill as the sewer. So there'll be two sections. It's very similar, essentially, how Radnor does it. They have the same accounting software that we do. So that'll just be a change. So there'll be some education for people on that to make sure that they notice that and recognize that. And so I think, one of the most important questions that I've gotten is, when do we expect the first bill? Right now, we're estimating 2025, just based off of when we get, our current sewer bill out during the year and when we start that process, with all the other tasks that are involved, 2025 right now is the earliest that I am, that we're estimating. I guess to answer the question as to why, we're going to start now on fee structure development, and we're expecting that to finish again in '24. Now, one of the things that we've talked about with the board and that we're going to move forward with is working with Jacobs directly to, starting now on the overall project scope, and which should save us, maybe 2 months, 60 days. I don't think that will have a major impact, again, on the actual timing. I think in all reality, in order for us, if the board wanted to have a bill go out in '24, we would have to be finished by this time next year, and I just don't see that happening at this point. I have ordinance development essentially 30 days after we finish the fee structure, because the fee structure is going to have to be a component of the ordinance development. And so, again, our task right now is going to be start working with the board subcommittee on the overall ordinance. Again, we have great blueprints. We have a few other municipalities around us, Westchester, Radnor, West Goshen, who have already written these. And so, hopefully we don't have to reinvent the wheel when working on the ordinance. One of the other things that Steve's going to be working on is a project master plan. So,
What does the red and the blue mean on the chart?
so red is essentially no activity.
Just to understand, so it takes till March of '24 to develop the fee structure. Is that how I read this?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm just trying to understand what it all
Yep.
means.
Yep.
And the ordinance takes till, I guess, May of.
Essentially, yeah, the ordinance is going to be 30 days after. So if we finish before, March 30th of '24, expect the ordinance to be 30 days behind that. Project master plan, again, I think just because of everything else that's involved with developing really a scope of work for Jacobs. In terms of the engineering study, we have a delay in there before we really start, again, addressing that. Because again, that's going to require a scope of work and a lot of work to go into that. So again, we push that out to August 30th of '24. But again, as we identified, we have 13 projects identified, infrastructure related projects that need to get done. That's not going to happen in 1 year or 2 years. That's then going to be the next couple of years. As I projected right now, a potential bond issuance, sometime around this time next year, I think we would, at the earliest, be ready to potentially issue one. And then, as I mentioned, first bill in 2025.
I'm sorry, just to go back to so the project master plan is the master plan for the actual projects.
Yeah.
So that has nothing to do with getting the fee done.
Nope.
So it's irrelevant for that.
Correct.
And the bond issuance also is irrelevant for
Correct.
the fee structure. So the only.
Yep.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Yeah, those can be done concurrently. As, same thing with the ordinance and the fee structure development concurrently.
That's what it gets, it can be done concurrently, but it gets to the question of, you said, we're doing this. Who's the "we" in the sentence? Because some of this is the same people, like, you
Yeah.
can't do it all concurrently.
Yeah, essentially, the staff that's here tonight, it's going to be, Mr. Martin, myself, Steve, Darren, Aaron, all of us will have a hand, on the staff side, and, some of our staff as well, but, most of the, Mr. McKenna is going to have to be involved with the ordinance and his associates, and then the board's subcommittee, stormwater subcommittee, will be also involved.
And some consultants
And Jacobs.
for the first two.
Yeah, for fee
Jacobs.
structure and ordinance, yeah, they'll be the ones
And
helping
then the
us.
master plan, first we get that will eventually be consultants too. so.
Yep.
And other townships have these fees, right? This isn't, like, we didn't make this up. as
Correct.
A stormwater fee. So I guess I'm still struggling why, I mean, and I've asked this a couple of times, I'm still struggling why it takes till March of 20, or May of 2024, whatever it is, to get this all done, if we're gonna
So
take and cut and paste and reuse somebody else's work.
the ordinance will not take that long, but I can't enact the ordinance, we can't have the board enact the ordinance until the fee structure is completed, because the fee structure is going to be in the ordinance. So theoretically, we could be done the ordinance by the end of the year if we work hard enough and can meet enough to do it. But it's just going to sit in draft form until that fee. So, one of the things that we're planning on when we meet with Jacobs to work with them to get the proposal for the board is, essentially, what's it going to cost to do it, at a regular pace, and then, essentially what's it going to cost to expedite it, and then we'll bring those back to the board to make a decision on which route we want to take. But that's the key to all of this. The sooner that gets done, the sooner everything else can get done.
Yeah, and as a philosophical point, I speaking for myself, I am kind of, I wish we could get the fee implemented sooner and get this on the road sooner. And I did ask Mr. DeRocco and Mr. Martin and others that question. And the bottom line is that we only have, a finite bandwidth of people like the Township Engineering Department and others. And there's, and we have totally failed in our attempts to, invest in cloning of Mr. Burgo and other things like that. So, we do have a bandwidth issue. And I would rather see 3 projects done well than to see 10 projects done, in a less well or a shoddy fashion. So at least for myself, I'm going to keep pushing them, but at the same time, I'm going to try to make sure that we don't cut corners. And I am impatient. I would like to see that fee structure go in place sooner, but I want it done right.
So what are our next steps? As I mentioned, staff in the board subcommittee will meet with Jacobs to begin work on, fee structure and the study. We'll work with the same subcommittee to begin work on a draft of the ordinance. I'll continue fine-tuning the operating budget for 2023. And then in terms of overall staffing, we'll start that process early next year. And that concludes.
Oh, no. There's a couple questions coming your way. So there's going to be $1 million in addition to the budget starting in 2023. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And there could be an additional hit to the budget based on the fact that we're going to be issuing a bond in 2023. Or no?
Potentially.
Potentially, right.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be, is the $750,000 for salaries?
Yeah.
I mean, some of that would have to go towards the new employees for MS4 anyway, right?
Correct.
Those aren't new employees simply for our stormwater management program.
Yeah. So if we were strictly speaking about MS4, it would be 2 people. But the board, we purchased a vac truck to use it, combined between our sewer department, as well as stormwater. And so with that, to operate that piece of equipment, safely and properly, in accordance with the laws, that's another 2 people. So that's how we got to 4, public works staff members, plus we're going to split a foreman between sewer and sanitary sewer and storm sewer. So that's half of that salary. And then an additional finance staff member to handle, the additional workload in finance.
Okay. What's, to the extent that you know, the cost of the known projects that need funding? Because I saw, you had a pretty good list of the projects that were funded, and needs funding. Do we have any idea what the total cost?
So I can tell you, Steve's applied for over $4 million in grants.
Okay.
And that's the funding requested totals over 4 million. And then plus, what we have listed is another $400,000+. So we're talking 4.5 million
And this
at
is,
least.
sorry, and this is for how many, because those grants, you can complete
So
them
that's-
within 5 years? Is that what ARPA is? Or how many years
ARPA,
of projects are these?
how many years worth of projects? Realistically, 5 years.
For which projects, these?
Yeah, for the.
All these? I mean, these, actually, one big thing I'll point out, just as a quick thing, is although Joe identified 15 projects, add 2 more, because the master plan and the fee don't just magically get done. Those are major capital projects. So multiple years worth of time and investment, they don't just happen. We got to guide those. So those are 2 more projects, so we're up to 17, and that doesn't already address any of the bridge or culvert projects we have planned in the 5-year too. So I think my last count, we had like 22 projects overall, which kind of are, some of them are combination of stormwater, but it's a major capital. Realistically, you're not probably, like, although this is in the 5-year, most of the engineering projects take multiple years to plan, design, permit, advertise, bid, and go through construction. They could be 3-year projects, each of those, to get them done. And that's just really the honest thing. You can't speed them up, because we also have to do public outreach with the communities we're working in for those projects. And the bidding requirements that we have for these types of projects for municipal bidding, they add 90 days onto that procedure. You got 3 months. You have to go through, get board approval. We have to go through, get the bid package advertised like we're doing with Pew Road right now. We have a minimum of 30 days. It could be longer, it could be 45. We get them back if the bids are reviewed and are in line with the budget. They go to the board for consideration of the lowest qualified bidder, notice of intent to award. Eventually, when we verify all the bonds and all the other stuff in, they get awarded. But just realistically, they're probably more than 5 years for these. And as Joe knows, he identified these numbers that we were going through. We have a lot of money. We have over $4 million identified in grants. We would love to get all that money. We'd love 100% of that funding. We did a lot of work. Jacobs was working with me. We did a lot of work to get these grants in a very short time frame in the month of May. If we don't get any of that grant money, then we have a big item to consider for these projects moving forward. We still have a lot of funding that's available for some of the projects which we're going to be completing. But we'll have some of these stormwater projects, we have partial funding, then we'll have to figure out next steps.
I think one of the issues that we deal with too is, and it's, again, Pew Road's a perfect example, is, we have a ton of utility conflicts because a lot of times these projects are in the street. And so, PICO, I think initially told us that the directional drilling for the gas line on Pew would be done by May. And here we are, and they haven't even begun. And so, I think, to just kind of reiterate that, we're hopeful to get as many done as we possibly can, but, there are
I'm just trying
factors
to,
outside of our control.
You've almost done too good a job showing how much of this is funded, need funding, and there's all these grants here. So I just want to see the big number, what you think is needed.
And that's
over the next 5 or so years for these stormwater projects, and then what's the number we're hoping to get from the stormwater management fee?
Yeah, and I think to hopefully address that, the bulk of our request for grant funding right now is through the county. And so our expectation is that we should know sooner than later what funding we'll receive and what we won't receive. Based on that, then I'll be able to tell the board, I think as part of the budget process, what exactly we need over the next 5 years. And identify and prioritize these projects that we have on the screen, so that way we can say, this is the most important, work through it that way as well. So, like I said, the worst case scenario, what we've identified is, essentially $5 million, that we've asked for grant funding for, and the projects with that, and we'll pare that down as much as we can, hopefully soon.
Okay, so I mean, it sounds like there's still a lot of unknowns, because we
Yes.
have to go ahead and make these investments first.
Yes.
To figure out what the numbers are that we're going to be receiving into our kitty, and then what
Yeah.
expenditures are expected in the future. So it's not a great position to be in, because we would like to have more information before we go in, but I think I understand a little better now. But I mean, it sounds like there's probably going to be some significant revenue increases, tax increases, looking forward to 2023 and 2024, merely to fund these additional expenditures to get us to this point, to 25, to get a fee in place.
Yeah, I think as part of the budget process, that's a question that we have to answer as the board. Do we want to just strictly fund these out of reserves and, see where that takes us, or do we want to consider, raising taxes a little bit now to help offset some of these costs, recognizing that you're down the road, those costs go away, and you're going to have, saves you a tax increase potentially down the road. It's something that we're looking very closely at, and I think this is a great exercise, and also as we determine that what revenue requirement we're going to have for the fee, what the proper number is going to be for that, for the engineering portion and the capital portion of the fee. When we worked through the exercises in March and April, we had a couple $1 million a year in for capital. I think this will help us, potentially pare that down, which just means, an estimated fee of, I think we had 226 could potentially go down because we won't need as much revenue there.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that we had how many public meetings to talk to residents about how we wanted to fund stormwater, and after all that work, the overwhelming response or the view was that we would have a stormwater fee. So I would be pretty careful and probably opposed to any idea that we're going to now increase the regular tax a little bit to cover stormwater before we can get to the fee implemented. I think that's something that I would want to think about pretty carefully before we actually did that.
Yeah, and I would expect as part of this budget process, especially, with what we have on the agenda tonight, our previous commitments, watching, the reserves, is a number we'll look very closely at. And again, we want to make sure, because, we're in a very fortunate position. And I'll use last year as an example with Fred and Ida. We didn't skip a beat. We were able to repave roads. We were able to replace infrastructure without any hesitation, without waiting. And a lot of municipalities don't have that ability, and so we do. And so I think that's obviously an important factor in all of this, as well as, just being ready to meet emergency needs. And so, yeah, we'll definitely have a lengthy conversation.
Do we have any other board comments or questions? Do we have any public comments or questions?
Do I need to go over there? Can I be here?
You can go there.
Oh.
Right?
Well, it's very exciting to see a plan after the Citizens Task Force worked away and kind of pushed us towards this, and now we've got something concrete, and that's great. So thank you very much. Of course, we share your concern about the very cautious time frame. And as I think Supervisor Miller in particular said, we're not the first township to have done this. Anne and the sub-team that worked on the fee structure side of things talked with a lot of other municipalities and a lot of consultants who have a lot of experience in coming up with a fee structure, which is really quite separate from the engineering plan, even though at the end of it they need to come together because you need to know how much to spend and how much to raise. And I was just wondering in particular, just first off, why we pick Jacobs for everything, and would it be possible to spread the load a bit and get things done sooner, particularly on the fee structure? And if you do that, then can you fund some increase in bandwidth that is clearly going to be critical to getting projects done?
So from our standpoint, Jacobs was the engineer firm who worked with us to develop our MS4 permit application, the mapping, all of that. So they have a great depth of knowledge in terms of what we're dealing with, in our, 7 watersheds. And so that's a factor. The fact that they've done this before is another factor. And then again, in an effort to streamline this as much as possible, Jacobs is our leading factor because the truth is, other than Jacobs, Steve's going to have to develop the, full, a larger scope of work instead of being able to just meet with Jacobs to kind of work together to develop. Steve's developing that scope of work that's going to be then issued for an RFQ, which is then going to be reviewed and then pared down to, maybe 3 engineering firms, which then will be interviewed. Mm-hmm. And then you'll select maybe 2 from that to ask for proposals for. And so that's going to take, a lot longer than, cutting through all that and recognizing that, Jacobs has an advantage because they've been here. And so that was, again, trying to balance all of that. And that's how we arrived at recommending Jacobs to the board.
Sorry, Jacobs is right now just for the fee structure, right?
I mean, they're going to develop the proposals, and they'll develop.
They might for all, but what we're trying.
We're not touching. So what we'll be working with Jacobs on right now will be the fee structure development and which is the engineering study and that side of it, as well as the ordinance development, help us tie those 2 things together because they are tied together.
Okay.
The master plan is a separate.
Yeah, the master plan.
That will be its own.
Okay.
That we will send out to RFQ and then RFP at the end.
And I'll say my recollection is the reason to go with Jacobs now for the fee structure and I guess the ordinance development is because it saves that time. It cuts out a couple of months, and we've worked with them, and so they have the expertise. And I think the idea was actually to speed things up.
Although the outcome is a 2-year process, so it doesn't seem very speedy compared.
It's an estimation. Again, there's a lot, and Supervisor Boschker touched on it. We have, Steve has a lot of other projects going on, as do, other staff members. And so, again, it's a balance. And again, this is the board's highest priority. We recognize that, which is, naturally is going to take up the most of our time. But, I'm trying to factor in all of that when we gave that date. Our hope is that we'll finish sooner. And I'm not trying to, under-promise and over-deliver here. I think it's just naturally other things pop up and come up that require attention. There's so many aspects and variables that go into this that streamlining this as much as humanly possible is what we'll do. It's really all I can
there are firms who have done, scores of these fee studies.
And I think, Ray, just to maybe add into what Joe was saying, is it's important to, look at this as everybody wants to move fast, and yes, you want to move fast, but in the end of this process, you want to make sure that you have all the
components of your stormwater fee done. For years, that's been floating around there, people talking about a stormwater fee. And just when you decide to do it, that's a great step forward, but we have to go through that process. A lot of other townships, there's 27 other municipalities as of 2019 in the state of Pennsylvania that have done a stormwater fee. So there's a lot of useful information that, yes, we heard that tonight, that can be taken as as Jacobs works with us and looks at that, they can, take bits and pieces. And we can work with them on the scope to try to streamline it as much as we can. But either way, there's a process they have to go through. There's public involvement aspects of that. There's engineering technical aspects of the development of the fee for Tredyffrin Township and for our residents and our nonprofits, for our businesses, and how that structure is going to be set up and how it's going to work best for our community and for the projects and all the other operating needs that we have. The public involvement is critical. We were talking with somebody from Radnor the other day, and they had mentioned, I think Murph had reached out, and we were going back and forth, and it was like they said, well, don't underestimate that process in order to get that, the community engaged in that process throughout the development of your fee. You just can't move forward and not have those discussions that are critical at key times. But I think there's an opportunity to do it, but there's a lot of municipalities that have taken solid 2 years worth of work to do that. And some, Westchester Borough, I think, took almost 3 years. There's a lot of different time frames for different communities. It's very rare that you ever see somebody just one. I don't think Patrick might even know this, but I don't think anybody just can adopt the fee. You just can't put it in place because you don't have the structure that goes along that identifies why you're doing it and what you're doing it for, and then it's not defensible because you don't really have that. And we're still trying to work on a parallel track, the stormwater master plan efforts as well. There's a lot of useful information we have. We have a lot of stuff that's in the current budget that's underway projects, and we have more stuff that we're already working on our 2023 and next 5-year cycle, and there's more adds to that plan. We've applied for grants. There's a lot of work that if we get that grant money, there's a lot of stuff that we can be doing as this whole process goes forward. If we don't get that, we look, but some of these projects are going to take several years. They're large projects. So by the time we get those projects ready to go to construction, hopefully we'll have more of this in place and we'll start being able to do that. And it's not a bad thing if some of those projects, take a couple years to get through. They're moving forward. So we've identified projects. We're moving them forward. I think, with Jacobs, when they go through this, they do have a wealth of experience as well. They're not just our MS4 consultant. They've done stormwater projects working with other groups in the township, working with us for years, going back even to the sidewalk project. They've worked with us on the stormwater for that. They did the design for the sidewalk project around the school, back in 2007 and 8. So from an engineering standpoint, they're solid. We've talked with their team who does MS4. They're working throughout the United States on different cities and larger implementation projects. So they have large and small scale, qualifications to do a stormwater fee structure.
I have no doubt about the engineering capabilities. I mean, obviously we've, used Jacobs and they've done great work for us. This fee seems more administrative and would maybe not take so much of Steve's time, maybe more of Joe's, to work with them on kind of the data that's needed and work with our communications people to do the public outreach. I don't know, I just feel that there could be more pedal to the metal, but obviously it's up for you to decide on that.
So I'll just say quickly, Westchester Borough took the better part of 3 years, and even after they finalized it, they delayed implementation for 6 months. Just to get the public word out. And please do not anyone forget, how many thousands of properties do you have in Tredyffrin, all of which are going to have to be inventoried in one manner or another to determine how much impervious that will take. That alone will take the better part of 1.5 to 2 years.
Well,
and I think you're going to have a lively, robust discussion of the ordinance and the rationale and the calculation of the fee, because you're not going to know what it's going to cost you until your property's inventoried and the fee is actually applied.
Conceptually, I think residents are there. And, the question is going to be how much of the precision and technical detail people are going to be concerned about down to the last square foot of impervious. I don't know. Yeah, I understand the caution, but I encourage you to keep asking the questions. So, one thing that kind of came out, there was a discussion about the tax increase for next year, or the potential for it, because of the $1 million that's out here. Now, that $1 million is really MS4 money, more or less, that you committed to spend. I mean, when you applied for your permit, you committed to that. So it's not like that's new benefit to residents, or so clearly that spending, MS4, is going to be a piece in the long run that comes out of the stormwater fee. We know that. But it's not something that residents are going to say, oh my goodness, it's going to be flood reduction benefits from this $1 million next year. No. So it needs to be kind of clearly positioned as part of the budget process, which, I mean, and it is great, by the way, to see the idea of a stormwater department with separate, or a fund with separate capital and operations. That will be a great step forward. So, but that money was kind of baked into the township budget before any discussion of stormwater fees. And I would say that if there is a way to get to the spending sooner, you can get to the revenue raising sooner, you can get to increasing bandwidth sooner, which is clearly very important. So anyway, thanks for listening.
Mr. Clark, Ray, I was absolutely not going to say anything about any of this because I have my own views. But one thing that came to mind, well, don't forget, we're going to be meeting with the consultants, staff, and folks from the board. And I was, one of my first comments would be, hey, we know there's a lot of complex work here to formulate this fee, to put it together. How fast can you do it? There have been 10,000. There have been 27 in Pennsylvania. This is me now. I'm one supervisor. There's been 27 municipalities in Chester County or Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania.
Wherever. There's lots in Pennsylvania. Let's get it together. Let's just sort of do it. I mean, what do we have to do? We have to look at every property. Let's start looking. I'm not trying to make it easy. I know, and I do know along with that, by the way, as great a job as the task force did, we're going to have public buy-in. We're going to have those meetings. We're going to have to do that, and we will do that. We are committed to do that. So I guess I'm only commenting to say, hey, my first question will be at one of these meetings. Let me put it to you, because we have people, and I'm one of them, because I want to see the cash flowing in as well as flowing out. I want to see some coming in. I don't know if it can be done any faster in any way, and I think Joe used the word streamline. I think we will be looking to do that, and we will be looking to move it forward as fast as we can. But sort of, one thing that did come to mind, and Joe mentioned that to me, saying, Murph, look, if you don't get it done in time, and 2023 is here in a flash, it's in 6 months, 2023, 7 months, it's going to be here. If we don't get it in time to do it early enough in 2023 to kick it off for billing in 2024, we're not going to make it. That is a problem, because you don't want to do it on a half year or something like that, I don't think, unless it can be done so. So that's my comment. I too fall on the side. I'd want to take advantage of what has come before us in other jurisdictions, and what you folks did, I know, in your report, and there's probably other details on that. We're going to look at Radnor because of what they did and the pains that they went through. But I too feel that I'd like to do it sooner rather than later, and take advantage of what's been done out there. But I don't know if I don't know. I'll know more when personally, say, Mr. and Ms. Consultant, it's showtime. Let's go.
January the 1st, 2024 is 18 months away.
Right. It's 18 months away. I'll just leave it there. I'll say it to
a
you.
long time.
But it's a billing thing too, by the way. I'm not using that as an excuse. Maybe that can be overcome. I'm one who wants to move faster if it's at all possible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, I think we will move back, and will anyone make a motion to? We already have the motion in the second. Okay. And that this is a roll call vote. Supervisor Miller.
Aye.
Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right, and now we are moving on to the motion to adopt Resolution 2022-11 to authorize the disposition of public records as set forth in the Municipal Records Manual and in accordance with Act 428 of 1968. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really have nothing to add to that other than this is just a required step in the process to get rid of our old paperwork that we're not required to keep.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, this is another roll call vote. Supervisor Miller? Supervisor Holt? Supervisor Wysocki? Supervisor Basker?
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right. Next, we have a motion to approve letter of support for Police Department application for a Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency 2022 Body Worn Camera Policy and Implementation Grant. Chief Beatty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a request to complete part of the application process to submit for this grant. We're looking to upgrade the equipment we bought in 2017, and part of this purchase, approximately 50% of it, could be covered by this grant. So we're just requesting the board's backing and approval to submit this letter to PCD, indicating our approval and desire to participate in the grant if possible.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. Any board discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize capital purchase of swings for Woodbine and Maisie B. Hall Parks. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Staff is requesting the approval for the replacement of the swing sets at both Maisie Park and Woodbine Park at a cost of $15,235. The breakdown would be Maisie Hall, $7,105, and Woodbine Park, $8,130. ARPA funds will cover the costs allocated to Maisie Park and were included in a project budget that was approved previously. The Parks Foundation has allocated $3,952 to cover a portion of the cost for the swings at Woodbine Park. If approved, this will complete the Maisie Hall ARPA-funded improvements and will be $6,835.36 under the $150,000 budget. We are proposing using $4,178 of those funds to cover our portion of the Woodbine Park swings. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize capital purchase of backhoe for Public Works. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Public Works is requesting the Board of Supervisors approval to replace a 2005 case backhoe with a 2022 case backhoe from Eagle Power and Equipment from Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania. The purchase price, which is under the CoStars program, including the trade-in for our current backhoe, is $130,222.82, which is under the budgeted amount which was included in a 22 budget. At this time, once the backhoe is ordered, unfortunately, we have no idea when the delivery date will be.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any board comment? Any public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize purchase and installation of solar panels for the new sewer building. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the past several months, I've been working to obtain, various proposals from firms that install solar panels on commercial buildings. I'm recommending the approval of the proposal from Smucker's Energy in the amount of $46,150.18. The solar panels that we're proposing to install are estimated to produce enough energy to actually run the building for us, which is a great thing. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. This is included in the project budget.
Do we have a?
Do you know how much power they're actually going to make?
So, because it's a new building, we don't. I gave them, I gave them the plan set, so they knew that obviously the general size of the building. I discussed what we would be doing in there. The thing that's going to use the most power, believe it or not, is going to be the wash bay equipment, which won't be used, around, as much as, the lights are going to be on. So it's going to have a pretty small energy load. One of the firms estimated, given the building of its size and its, potential use or estimated use, like a 7-year payback period, based off of their experiences.
I guess I'm just curious, how many panels are you putting on? What is the power? I just did this, so I'm curious.
I'm sorry?
How many panels are you putting on, and what's the power rating of the panels? I just did this at my house.
It's 12 LG 400 watt bifacial solar panels, 12 kilowatt inverter, and then the 19.2 kilowatt hour lithium battery. So the battery that'll store the energy. So.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other board comments? Any public comment? Come on up.
Question of clarification, where is the building? Please come up. Okay. I just wanted to know where the building was.
Here at the Township Complex, in our Public Works yard, we're squeezing it in between two of our existing buildings.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's going to be here at the Township Complex. It's right down here. Yep.
Any other public comment? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to accept proposal for door security and cameras for the new sewer building. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We are recommending approval of the proposal to add the cameras and door equipment, door security equipment, hardware. The cost, I'm sorry, I opened up the wrong memo. Here it is. Cost is $30,207 from Valley Forge Security Center, which is a CoStar's vendor. This also is included in the project budget.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comment? Any public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize advertisement of zoning text amendment for O Office District and map amendment for 1340 West Sweetsford Road, and I believe I will be making a motion to table this to a future meeting.
And I will second that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, now we are moving on to the motion to authorize the township manager to execute a letter of support for Valley Forge Trout Unlimited's Growing Greener grant application. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before you tonight is a letter of support being requested by Trout Unlimited for a stormwater filtration trench in the vicinity of Oak Elizabeth Lane in the township. This is part of the Krabby Creek Valley Creek watershed. It's a part of our green rent application, and they were seeking our support. I believe Ann Murphy is here. If you have any additional questions about the project, she'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. Any board comment? Any public comment? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to consider and authorize advertisement of a public hearing on July 18th, 2022 for H.R. 453 to authorize the purchase of the property at 1485 Valley Forge Road. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. Before the board this evening is an ordinance for your consideration to authorize for advertisement. This ordinance is pursuant to Section 601 of the Charter of the Township, which requires any time an interest in real estate is to be acquired or authorized to be acquired that an ordinance be enacted. This ordinance would essentially permit the approval of the attached agreement of sale, which is included with the ordinance for the purchase of a 6.3 acre parcel of land located at 1485 Valley Forge Road, the purpose of which would be to be utilized as a fire substation by the Berwyn Station, as well as any other potential township and recreational uses that may be made on that property. So we're asking for authorization to advertise for enactment in July.
Thank you. And I'll just add that this is an opportunity going forward. We've been looking for a location in the future in this area for a permanent fire EMS station to serve the lower part of Tredyffrin. So this, I believe, is a good move for the future, and this is just the first step in this process. So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other board discussion or comment?
I would just say that a lot of work has gone into exploring this purchase, and I'm thankful for all the hard work that supervisors, staff, and others have done. I know it's been really incredible to see everybody dedicate their time to this endeavor, and I'm very excited by it.
Any other board comment?
Well, the only thing I would add is we did just kind of beat staff up a little bit on timing for the implementation of the fee, and I think this is an example where staff and everyone really moved very quickly to get things done. So I do appreciate all the hard work to get here. So
Since we're talking about timing, in my time here and observing how things happen in government as I know it, this was a record set here, record in not only in getting it done and making the connection through Supervisor Miller, and then just powering through with staff and a few consultants and the board. So it's been good. We have challenges here to jump through, conditions to be satisfied, but we're moving in the right direction, and this is a good thing for the township and for public safety. So let's move forward.
Any other board comment? Any public comment?
Good evening. Just real quick, just wanted to echo the sentiments that have been shared. I'd like to thank Bill Martin, Pat, Joe DeRocco, and the supervisors for, as Supervisor Saki pointed out, moving this along. David Miller for his efforts. As everyone knows, this has been a very long road for several of us, and the fact that this effort got done at this rate is phenomenal. Obviously, we have some things that need to get done. Justin Brunens, our chief, is here this evening. Tom Torres, our president. Certainly, if there's anything you need from us as this moves forward, we're obviously here to help. But we greatly appreciate everything that's going on to this, because we know you have a lot of other priorities, including stormwater, that are going on, but we're very excited. The members are on cloud 9 right now. This is a really big deal, so thank you very much.
Any other public comment?
Ray Clark again. Obviously, a spectacular location, one would imagine, that couldn't be really more perfect. but of course many questions, and maybe those should be referred to the hearing, but things like, was there an appraisal? Will the building be kept? Will the township lease the property to the fire company? What are the recreational uses? And so on and so forth. And is there any further detail available now, or do we have to wait?
I think a lot of that is still in progress, so we won't have the answers to all of that until the public hearing. I don't know if, Pat, if you want to...
The one thing I can respond to, we are required to have an appraisal. So that is in the works. We don't have it yet. So we are waiting for that. The township's not allowed to spend more than fair market value. So we expect that appraisal will come in hopefully by the end of June, before the end of June.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, great. And like I say, it does seem a perfect location that should be like a really long-term solution that we're all going to be very grateful to put behind us. So thank you.
Any other public comment? All right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now we will move on to escrows. We have a motion to approve the final release of $1,558,712.19 for 500 Chesterbrook Boulevard, LP Phase A, and of $1,696,168.68 for Phase B. Balance remaining is $0. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, this is a final release of both the Phase A and Phase B portions, the two residential portions of the 500 Chesterbrook development around the shopping center. It has been complete, all work has been completed. It's been inspected both by Township as well as our consultants at Princeton Hydro. There was a punch list of some items that were outstanding. We worked with the developer and their team to get those basically all addressed. The last of those items was completed on June 10th and inspected, and we're recommending full release from the Board of Supervisors this evening.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Actually, I have a question. Or should I wait?
Usually I ask for the motion and second first.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comment or question?
Yeah, I have a question. So that Parkview drains into a drainage basin that is on basically next to Wilson Road, between Wilson Road and the quarters on the other side of Chestnut Boulevard. Has anybody inspected that basin and looked at the situation there now that they've been dumping water into it? Because it's really quite, not performing the way it should, basically is what I would say. Has anyone looked at that? I mean, as part of this release, have you made sure that all the water's flowing through out of Parkview properly?
We haven't looked off-site of this particular development. I mean, Princeton Hydro did go through and inspect that everything that was per the plan was installed appropriately. The residential has a series of underground stormwater features underneath the entire loop road, as well as some infiltration. The infiltration green area in that one corner of the development, but all the items that were part of the land development were inspected and deemed adequate for release. There was no off-site investigation or work downstream.
So that basin is overflowing now, which it never used to, and it could be, obviously it's also silted up probably since as Parkview was being built, but it's definitely overflowing now than it never used to, down Wilson Road and kind of causing some damage in that area. So do we know if Parkview is part of, there's a maintenance agreement for that basin? Is Parkview part of that maintenance agreement? I'm just trying to figure out if some of this money should be used to repair some of the dam and, the sediment that got dumped into that as part of the construction.
Well, we can't use the financial security money to repair something that wasn't used to secure the improvement that was constructed. So we couldn't do that even if we wanted to. So that had to be a separate issue.
I mean, so in regards to that, I mean, that would be a separate issue to look into, but I mean, as Mr. McKenna had stated, The escrow is for the improvements that were physically part of the land development plan, and those have been inspected by our folks at Princeton Hydro, and they have been completed. So the stormwater, the underground stormwater, the surface stormwater basins that are associated with the residential have all been completed, as well as the other improvements, the installation of the sidewalks, the lighting, the landscaping, and all those items. Those are what are being considered by the board for release, but that would be a separate item. There is an HOA with that development as well, and if there's, that's the first we've heard of any kind of concern at this point in time after all this time of the project.
Any other board comments or questions? Any public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. Now we move on to new matters, and for board member new matters, I will start off by saying that the board would like to take a moment to acknowledge Beth DePenna on the occasion of her retirement after almost 18 years of valuable service provided to the township and its citizens as a public works operator, for her tireless efforts and countless hours provided during severe weather events, for her care in dealing with the residents and their concerns and the needs of the township at all parks, public spaces, and municipal buildings, and for all that she has done during her time with us. Thank you, and Mr. Fitzgerald, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think we'd all just like to thank Beth for everything she's done. She's done everything here from running the grass crew to driving a dump truck, like you were saying, countless hours in the snowstorm. So most recently, she's been taking care of Wilson Farm Park. I think we've all seen an improvement over there with the way it's been taken care of over the last couple of years. And if anybody has a chance between now and July 8th to stop over and say goodbye to her, please feel free to, and she will be deeply missed in our department.
Thank you. Any other board member new matters? Any public citizen new matters?
Madam Chair, there was an email submitted by a resident, Margaret Van Narsen. I believe she's in the audience tonight. She had originally submitted, I guess, an email back on April 11th. I know some members of the board and staff have talked to her about an issue on dealing with trash collection on ordinance 168-5. She has a lengthy email she submitted, which you all received in your packet, and since she's here tonight, I would prefer her feel free to speak on the issue, since our minutes are not like a court reporter, so if I read this, it's not going to be all verbatim in the record, but the board all has original copy, and we'd be happy to hear from your comments tonight, and hopefully we can address them.
Yes, please come up to the microphone.
I'm Margaret Van Arsen. I live at 460 Prussian Lane, and I have long wanted to deal with this issue of the trash collection ordinance, and it seems to me it's something that can be easily resolved just by changing the time at which you are requiring that trash be put out before the day of collection. And I feel like I feel like it can be moved from the deadline for, you're supposed to put out the trash by 6 o'clock. No, not before 6 o'clock, according to the ordinance. And I feel like that's sort of an unreasonable time frame. This is the day before collection. Half the year, it's getting dark then. Who wants to go out and put out the trash in the dark? Trash bins. It's also coincides with dinner time or preparation. I did contact the Planning and Zoning Commission office, and I was told, well, there are no complaints, so you're the only one that's complaining, so there's no need to consider it. And I feel like so there's no evidence to consider it. And I guess I wish it could be considered because it's practical. And also I was also told, well, there's plenty of window to put your trash out, and if you don't get it out then, you can do it in the morning, the next day. Well, both of the pickup times, the pickup time in the morning is when everybody's preparing to go get your kids to school or getting breakfast, and in the evening it coincides with your dinner time. And I'm suggesting that we just simply move it back as a time in which we can put out the trash from about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I have I did post a notice to a local network, one of the local listservs, mentioning it, and I don't know if the office has received any feedback from them, but I did do my own survey of driving around about 9 blocks of where I live, and I found about 36 residents were already putting out their trash or had already put it out by about between 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So why do we have to wait until 6 o'clock to put it out when we're getting ready for dinner or when it's getting dark, or have to do it in a rush in the morning the day before? And I just would like to have it considered, and I don't know, and this is probably one of the easiest things that you can do as a board of supervisors, is just to change the time in that ordinance. And I don't know what happens next, but I would like for you to consider it, please.
Thanks so much for coming out and sharing that comment. Do we have any response?
There is additional, there's a hand raised, I guess, so. I assume this is related, I'm not sure.
Mr. Coonan?
Yes, good evening. Richard Coonan.
Oh.
We can't hear you, Mr. Coonan. I think your microphone is not functioning correctly.
I'm sorry, can you hear me? Am I audible now?
Yes.
Good. I'm Richard Coonan, Chair of the Tri-Creek Watershed Residents Association and a resident of Tredyffrin Township. I have to agree with Margaret Van Nersen about the put-out time. 6 o'clock is approximately dinner time for many, many people. And I, for one, I don't wish to go into personal health details, but just for discussion purposes, I simply am not able to physically to do exercise after eating. It's the same concept as don't go swimming for an hour after you eat lunch. It has to do with blood flow and from the heart to the digestive system. It's a pain in the neck, and it's something that one lives with. I put the trash out before I have dinner. If I were to put it out the next morning, I can tell you for a fact that I often hear trash trucks coming by shortly after my alarm clock rings at the early hour of 7 o'clock in the morning. And that's, at what point does the township have the opportunity, the government have the opportunity to direct when people get up, when people do exercise, when people have dinner, and all of that kind of thing? Because all of this kind of stuff is included and involved in a 6 o'clock time limit for putting trash out. I understand that you do not like having trash cans out. When I drive through my neighborhood and other neighborhoods in Tredyffrin, I see trash out. I see all kinds of things. People's living room furniture, old picture frames, mattresses, all sorts of things. And yes, indeed, it is unsightly, but something, we all have trash. I recall visiting a relative who lived in Bel Air in the Los Angeles section of California, where many, many television people lived. I remember driving by Bob Hope's house, and he was out there putting out his trash, believe it or not. So everybody has trash. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live. I really have to agree and support Margaret on her request that this time limit be considered. We all are not able, for various reasons, one reason or another, to accommodate the township in its desire to have trash put out between certain hours. It does not always work. The township's primary concern, as is repeated in many, many ordinances, is the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. And of course, putting out trash is a health matter. We don't want trash just all over out when it can be put out, knocked all over the place. If we put trash out at night, animals can get into it. We understand all that stuff. But at the same time, we really do have to recognize that the health, safety, and welfare includes a whole lot more than just simply the appearance of a neighborhood on crash day. I do hope you will very seriously and importantly consider this apparently minor point in the Township Code of Ordinances, but it does impact how people live their lives. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you both for your comments on that. And we can discuss further offline.
So, yeah, Matt, we did also receive an email from someone who was against changing the time today they're happy with the existing time, so.
Okay. Chief Beatty, I think, wanted to have a comment as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to update public, and we'll be posting on the township website and our social media for July 4th for the fireworks. Just remind the public that the 4th of July, the fireworks will be at Wilson Farm Park beginning at dusk. For those with pets and family members that do not like the noise, proper precautions should be taken. We just want to make sure that's done ahead of time. With some feedback we got from last year, the traffic flow was looked at, and we'll be posting the traffic flow plan. Basically, anything would be on the Wilson Farm Park side of Chesterbrook will be going right-hand turn only, so plan accordingly. If you want to park in those interior lots, when you come out, you're going to go to Chesterbrook and make right turns to leave the area. If you want to be on the other side of Chesterbrook to go out, we'll be going back towards like either 202 or Dupertay Road. You would be on the other side, just to try and get the flow. We have was too much cross traffic, basically bottlenecked and gridlocked everything with the amount of pedestrians also on the road. So for right now, plan accordingly on your parking where you'd like to view the fireworks. We'll post it with the maps and have all that for you to take a look at prior to going to them. We hope everybody has a safe weekend and a enjoyable night at the 4th of July fireworks. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other public comment? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. That concludes our meeting.